morning and welcome to the reading of Dr. Martin Luther King's Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? Where do we go from here? Chaos or Community? We're reading at least one page daily, and we are on page 84. The inscription on the Statue of Liberty refers to America as the quote-unquote mother of exiles. The tragedy is that while America became the mother of her white exiles, she evinced no motherly concern or love for her exiles from Africa. It is no wonder that out of despair and estrangement, the Negro cries out in one of his sorrow songs, "Sometimes I feel like a motherless child." It looks like I'm missing page 86. Nope. I'm missing page 84, 85. Interesting. That's why we have the book. The marvel is, as Frederick Douglass once said, that Negroes are still alive. In dealing with the ambivalence of white America, we must not overlook another form of racism that was relentlessly pursued on American shores: the physical extermination of the American Indian, the South American example of absorbing the indigenous Indian population was ignored in the United States, and the systematic destruction of a whole people was undertaken. The common phrase, "the only good Indian is a dead Indian," was virtually elevated to national policy. Thus, the poisoning of the American mind was accomplished not only by acts of discrimination and exploitation, but by the exaltation of murder as an expression of courage and initiative of the pioneer. Just as Southern culture was made to appear noble by ignoring the cruelty of slavery, the conquest of the Indian was depicted as an example of bravery and progress. Thus, through 2 centuries of continuous indoctrination of Americans, has separated people according to mythical superior and inferior qualities, while a democratic spirit of equality was evoked as the national ideal. These concepts of racism and this schizophrenic duality of conduct remain deeply rooted in American thought today. This tendency of the nation to take one step forward on the question of racial justice and then take 2 steps backward is still the pattern. Just as an ambivalent nation freed the slaves a century ago with no plan or program to make their freedom meaningful, the still ambivalent nation in 1954 declared school segregation unconstitutional with no plan or program to make integration real. Just as Congress passed Civil Rights Bill in 1868, they refused to enforce it. The Congress passed a Civil Rights Bill in 1964. To this day has failed to enforce it in all its dimensions. Just as the 15th Amendment in 1870 proclaimed Negro suffrage, only to permit its de facto withdrawal in half the nation. So in 1965, the Voting Rights Law was passed and then permitted to languish with only fractional and half-hearted implementation. I'm reading another page. The civil rights measures of the 1960s engraved solemn rights in the legal structure, but after winning piecemeal and incomplete legislation and proclaiming its historic importance in magnificent prose, the American government left the Negro to make the unworkable work against entrenched segregationist state power, with almost total dependence economically on those they had to contend with, and without political experience, the impoverished Negro was expected to usher in an era of freedom and plenty. When the war against poverty came into being in 1964, it seemed to herald a new day of compassion. It was the bold assertion that the nation would no longer stand complacently by while millions of its citizens smothered in poverty in the midst of opulence. But it did not take long to discover that the government was only willing to approach such a limited budget that it could not launch a good skirmish against poverty, much less a full-scale war. Moreover, the poverty program, which in concept elated the Negro poor, became so embroiled in political turmoil that its insufficiencies were magnified and its operations paralyzed. Big city machines felt threatened by it, and small towns, especially in the South, directed it away from Negroes. Its good intentions and limited objectives were frustrated by the skillful maneuvers of experienced politicians. The worst effect of these manipulations was to cast doubt upon the program as a whole and discredit those Negroes involved in its direct administration. In 1965, the president presented a new plan to Congress, which finally passed in 1966, for the rebuilding entire slum neighborhoods. With other elements of the program, it would, in his words, make the decaying cities of the present into masterpieces of our civilization. This demonstration city's plan is imaginative. It embodies social vision and properly defines racial discrimination as a central evil. However, the ordinary Negro, though no social or political analyst, will be skeptical. He will be skeptical first because of the insufficient funds assigned to the program. He will be skeptical second because he knows how many laws exist in northern states and cities prohibiting discrimination in housing, in education, and in employment. He knows how many overlapping commissions exist to enforce the terms of these laws. He knows how he lives. The ubiquitous discrimination in his daily life tells him that laws on paper, no matter how imposing their terms, will not guarantee that he will live in a quote-unquote the masterpiece civilization, end quote. Throughout our history, laws affirming Negro rights have consistently been circumvented by ingenious evasions which render them void in practice. Laws that affect the whole population, draft laws, income tax laws, traffic laws, manage to work even though they may be unpopular. But laws passed for the Negro's benefit are so widely unenforced that it is a mockery to call them laws. There is a traffic gulf between civil rights laws passed and civil rights laws implemented. There is a double standard in the enforcement of laws and a double standard in the respect for particular laws. All of this tells us that the white backlash is nothing new. White America has been backlashing on the fundamental God-given and human rights of Negro Americans for more than 300 years. With all of her dazzling achievements and stupendous material strides, America has maintained its strange ambivalence on the question of racial justice. We will pick up on page 87 on next time. God bless you. Amen. And may God keep you. Start a revolution in your mind. Readers are leaders. Thank you so much.